What's up, guys? It's Karlos Lyons, and thank you so much for tuning in to my YouTube channel. Hey, if you like the content that you see here, please like, share, and subscribe. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about men, mental health, and sexual addiction. And I have a very special guest on today. His name is Cedric Hoard out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. How you doing, Cedric?
Man, I'm great, man. I'm great. Thanks for having me. Blessed to be here. And yeah, just excited to talk about this conversation today.
Absolutely, man. So before we kind of get jumping into this conversation about men and mental health, can you just tell our viewing audience a little more about who you are, your credentials, and your area of expertise?
Absolutely, for sure. So once again, my name is Cedric Hoard. I am a licensed professional counselor here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So it's pretty cold here in the winters, but yeah, we are making it through. Just a little bit about me. Really what I work with primarily is men, specifically with men with sexual addictions. And that includes, pornography, intimacy issues, things of that nature. And then I also work with populations dealing with depression, anxiety, and trauma-related aspects as well. But mainly my main clientele is young men and older men.
And how did you actually get involved in, wanting to go this route with therapy? Because I have an interesting story in that this wasn't a lifestyle career choice like early on in my life. I'd say that this career of therapy and counseling kind of found me. So I want to hear like what your story is and your journey into becoming a therapist.
Wow, man, I have a number of various stories that I think God was just kind of lining everything up for me to go down this path. But I'll share a funny story. So really starting in 7th grade, and I would come home from school and my mother would have the TV on and I would just be glued to Dr. Phil's show for whatever reason. I would just watch it. I would just soak it all in, knowing that, of course, it's TV, it has probably some embellishment and things like that. But that really sparked my interest, just watching the Dr. Phil show and
Wow.
Feeling like, hey, this is something I could do. Just listening to people's stories and guiding them and supporting them in their life. So that's kind of a funny story, but a more serious situation that I think really changed the trajectory of my life was sophomore year of high school when my best friend actually died. He actually passed away in his sleep, had a episode of having epilepsy in his sleep, passed away. Situation really got my attention. And it really came at a time in my life in high school where I was really trying to figure myself out, having a lot of identity issues, trying to figure out who I was and who I wanted to be. And I feel like that moment really, really got my attention in a number of different ways. And I really wanted to help other people who were in the same situations as me, other young men who were just trying to figure out life, trying to navigate life, trying to navigate their emotions. So that was really kind of the spark plug for me. So went to college with a psychology degree, and it was one of my advisors that actually kind of pushed me within the mental health, clinical mental health counseling route. So number of different stories and situations, but really believe it was birthed at a young age. And unfortunately, due to difficult life circumstances, that really led me to where I am today.
Honestly, the both of us as Black men in therapy is very rare. And I live here in Dallas, Texas, and I can't count as far as like on one hand how many I actually know personally.
Wow.
There's very few, but they are here, and we want to make sure that we start connecting with more men in the therapy profession because men need other men, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit of your area of therapy when you talk about, sexual addiction. And we just talk about men in therapy in general. Like, what do you think are some struggles that men have with embracing the therapeutic process and even considering being transparent with their emotional and mental health?
Yeah. You know, I think in large part, historically, traditionally, society has not really encouraged or allowed men to be able to share their feelings. And I think that's where you know, kind of get hear the term toxic masculinity. It's not that masculinity in and of itself is toxic, but the messages that men receive, um, those messages can be toxic, such as, you know, you're not man enough if you share your emotions, or sharing your emotions or expressing those emotions, that's equated to being feminine, right? Instead of just being human. Emotions are a natural part of being a human. So I think you have some of those messages that creep in, whether that's societal, whether that's cultural, and even family of origin. So I think you have a lot of that playing into that. And then when you think of therapy in general, and I'm more so talking about the Black community now, unfortunately, historically, distrust for medical establishments in the Black community is not without merit. There have been historical instances that would suggest that sometimes putting trust in medical professions is sometimes not the way to go. So I think all those different things, if you think about culturally, and then men, all those things I think are compounding and coming up against one another. So I think that's what really makes it difficult. But I think overarching, it's this feeling of if I share what I'm feeling, or if I share that I'm struggling, that equates to me being weak or either inadequate.
Man, that is so good. That is very good, man. And it's interesting to hear you talk about that, because emotional regulation is kind of taboo amongst men, but it's not like we don't experience emotions.
Yeah.
It's just idea of kind of hiding it or tucking it away for something later, and then it finds itself, this is where I want to go. It finds itself in different addictions or addictive behaviors or coping skills, right? And I know that you talk about sexual addiction. So tell me, what are some themes that you see that men have when they come to you for help in the therapeutic process?
Absolutely. I think when it comes to sexual temptation, addiction, pornography, the theme that I see with most men is this word inadequacy. In some part of their life, it was something or a combination of things that created this feeling of inadequacy in their life. I can think of in particular, one particular client, good man, very successful in his life. Just for whatever reason, I think just recession and things that were happening just during that specific year, lost his job, laid off his job. So for him, that message or that story he was telling himself was that manhood is equated to me having a good job or being able to provide for my family. Because now he didn't have that. Now questions his manhood, questions his purpose, question who he is. So in a way, because he struggled with sexual temptation, pornography temptation throughout his life, that now became an avenue to, hey, I don't feel like I'm good enough in these areas of my life. So now pornography, sexual addiction, other women make me feel as if I am good enough, if I am adequate enough. So we could see his story, right? And not to excuse his behavior, but I think it does give context to this deeper message of inadequacy. Where are men truly finding their identity in? And sometimes the sources of those things, if not careful, can really open the door to other temptations, other struggles, other vices, whatever you want to call it in their life. You know, I tell my clients who are struggling with this, like, hey, you are sitting across from someone that has been through some of those challenges as well. So you heard already a little bit, and just in high school, some of the challenges that I faced. But for a lot of, young men, I was introduced to pornography when I was young in middle school. My best friend, the one that I actually talked about that passed away, he was actually the one that had brought some pictures, some pornographic materials in the locker room after gym. And I remember it just sparked this curiosity for me. I remember later that day, snuck on the computer. I think my parents were in the other room or something like that. And I started just looking up some of the stuff that he presented. And for me, that was really the first time I encountered anything sexual in that nature. So it started out as this curiosity thing. And I say this in a very simplistic kind of cycle. I think it's more nuanced than this, but I think for some men, it does start off as this curiosity thing. Like, what is this about? Let me see more. Starts as curiosity, moves to what I call this craving. So now I'm interested in this. I want more of this. And then it ultimately moves to this coping or escaping. I really can't find myself living without this. I need this in order to quote unquote function in my life. So I really say that that's what it was for me, that cycle. Started as a curiosity thing. Now I'm interested in this. I'm craving this. And now whenever I'm stressed, wherever I'm anxious, this is my go-to. And I think psychologically, if we really dive in and think about it, pornography doesn't reject you. Psychologically, it doesn't reject you. You can have rejection from other people. You can have rejection by anything in life. But I think psychologically, pornography is that thing that always fuels this feeling of I'm being accepted. I don't have to be vulnerable in order to get pleasure, you name it. So yeah, man, I definitely have personal experiences in this which really drives my passion in this.
Man, the way you just broke that down very systematically was absolutely on point. The accuracy there, man. And I also have had my own personal experience as well. I think what you talked about with the sexual curiosity, it starts very early and then it evolves into this other thing of I cannot live without this.
Yeah.
And one thing that I harp on now is talk about, neuroplasticity. So it's this fancy word that's thrown around in neuroscience and psychology that talks about the neurological pathways in your brain being malleable and being able to change. And it's like the way that you hardwire yourself over time to need and be addicted to whatever it is, not even just porn, but whatever it is. It could be food, it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be marijuana. It manifests itself in so many different ways. But the same way that you can go into that cycle, that addictive cycle, and get your brain hardwired in this direction, it just takes the same amount of effort to go in the other direction and open up new neurological pathways. So tell me about what kind of work you do, or what do you recommend for men who are not in therapy yet, or who may be interested in it, and like, what is the first action steps in wanting to move out of this addictive cycle?
Absolutely. I always say this, that really in terms of pornography, we just don't watch pornography. We use pornography. Basically saying that it's a reason why we go to these various things. So you probably know, but for listeners, I would be considered what people would call a CBT therapist. CBT is just short for this longer kind of word or theory in counseling called cognitive behavioral therapy. So I'll explain what that means. You don't have to remember, if you're listening, the name of it, but basically the premise of CBT is saying that there's a connection between our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors. So if you think of a triangle, triangles have 3 points that are all connected with one another. It's really the same way with part of us that thinks things, perceives things, part of us that feels things on an emotional level, and a part of us that responds, our actions and our behaviors. So that's really where I start off with a lot of men, because I think, especially for men coming into counseling, I think the thing that they want is structure and something tangible that they can kind of follow. So I always make that connection. There's certain situations, certain events in life that prompt certain thoughts, these narratives that we have. These thoughts impact how we feel and then ultimately influence our behaviors. So if we, consider the topic of pornography, right? Let's just say a man has a very hard day at work. Okay. So he gets home and he just wants to be able to talk to his wife. He just wants that comfort and that listening ear from his wife. But let's just say his wife has had an equally hard day at work. So he gets home, he just wants to just kind of just relax, share things with her. Because she has had a difficult day, she's not able to be fully present with him. What that can feel like, even though it's not the wife's intention, is this feeling of rejection. Man, my wife's not there for me, right? That's the thoughts, that's the narratives. I had this long day, and now I can't even find this sense of rest in my own home. So you have all these thoughts, all these narratives that may not even necessarily be true, but nevertheless, it's things that you tell yourself. That obviously we can see how can impact your emotions. You're more stressed, feeling rejected, feeling dejected. And then the behavior, right, is no one cares about me. No one's listening to me. I feel rejected. Here's now pornography, or here's now going on Instagram and disassociating and scrolling, all this other stuff. So I kind of use that as like a simple example, but I think it's sometimes a real example of, if we're not careful, how these different cycles can happen. So the thing, in kind of a long explanation, the thing that I really encourage people is to start making those connections in their life. What is the situation, right? How am I interpreting this situation or this event? What am I telling myself? What thoughts, what narratives are going on inside my head? And then really making that connection to how is this interpretation impacting how I feel? And then how do I want to respond based on these things? I think sometimes stretching it out further, so to speak, and allowing us to see those connections gives us a different context, but it also now gives us the ability to be like, hey, if I'm recognizing that I usually go to this behavior because I'm telling myself this or I'm feeling this, I now have a better opportunity to be able to kind of change some of those behaviors. And as you were talking about with neuroplasticity in the brain, the great thing about the brain is that even though it makes these associations and connections, it's not fixed and once for all.
Yes.
It can rewire itself.
Absolutely.
So I'm able to make these new connections and these new associations. I can now make healthy choices and decisions in my life.
Yeah, man. And I think it can't be understated too with this whole area of habits and addictions and cycles. There's this chemical we call dopamine, right? And it's this feel-good situation we got going on in the brain. It's like once you have a pleasurable experience, your brain is like releasing this chemical and it's saying, hey, let's do that again. Let's remember that. Yeah. And if we think about it in that sense, we have over time told our brain, kind of trained our brain to think, hey, this was pleasurable. This was able to bring us the satisfaction that we wanted in this situation. Let's do that again. Let's keep doing it. And it just gets deeper and it gets deeper and it's deeper. And the grooves that it makes in the brain, I've even read about that, like the different ways it just kind of entrenches itself in the neurological pathways in your brain. It's amazing. Absolutely. But what are some resources, Cedric, that you would encourage our viewers to take advantage of when it comes to sex addiction, when it comes to men, therapy, anything that comes to mind for you?
Yes. So I want to mention two great books, and I'll kind of read it slow, just for the listeners to write it down, and I'll share the authors as well. But as we are talking about the brain, I think a really good book is to look up. It's called Wired for Intimacy. That's the main title. And the tagline is How Pornography Hijacks the Male Brain. So Wired for Intimacy, How Pornography Hijacks the Male Brain. That is by a man by Dr. William Struthers. So William, last name Struthers, Struthers. Really good book. Really goes in depth about the science and how not only pornography, but any addictive subject or vice can really hijack, so to speak, the brain. So it talks more about the dopamine released, talks about other neurochemicals and really how our brains are wired, but yet how we can rewire it into healthy ways. So that's Wire for Intimacy. And then the other book, which I really recommend, it's probably one of my most favorite books on sexual pornography addiction. And that's this book called Unwanted. Tagline, How Sexual Brokenness Reveals Our Way to Healing. So Unwanted, How Sexual Brokenness Reveals Our Way to Healing. And that's written by a counselor based in Seattle by the name of Jay Stringer. A little bit about that book, because that's a book that I recommend with a lot of my clients in conjunction with therapy. Reason why I really like this book, it really goes in depth and it really addresses how our stories, our life circumstances can actually reveal why sexual brokenness or sexual addiction sometimes really wreaks havoc in our life, whether that's family of origin, whether that's early experiences that we went through, or even these thoughts or these narratives that we kind of quote unquote tell ourselves. They all reveal a way to why we go to pornography or sex to be able to cope and heal, so to speak. So I think those are really great two books. They're not that expensive. You can find them pretty much anywhere on Amazon. So I really encourage men to go there. And then I think social media is a very powerful platform. There are many pages, many podcasts that deal with this particular subject. So just being able to be connected that way, I think podcasts are also cool because there is this sense of being anonymous, right? Especially if you're coming into this, I definitely get it. There can be an element of shame and awkwardness in talking about this, but I think just becoming familiar with some of these different podcasts, some of these different social media pages is a great way of kind of starting out your journey towards healing.
Man, those are awesome. I would also like to add, there's a really good, helpful, free website with a lot of information called Fight the New Drug. Yeah. And it's about porn. It's a really good website, a lot of good visuals and just a really interactive experience. If anybody's interested in wanting to learn more about studies on porn and its effect on the brain, the heart, and the world around us, I think that's a really good resource. Then also a book that I would recommend is not necessarily specifically talking about addiction, but it's talking about mental health in general. It's called Change Your Brain, Change Your Life by Dr. Daniel Amen. I think it's a very revolutionary book. It really changed the way I thought about things concerning my own mental health. And again, it's Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. So if anybody's interested in any of these resources, I'll make sure to have notes on them in the comment section below on this YouTube video. And Cedric, how can people, stay in contact with you, man?
Yes. Follow me on social media and primarily on Instagram. You can just type in my full name, Cedric Dale Hoard. Last name Hoard. Apart from counseling world, I'm also a spoken word artist. So I have a number of poems just addressing mental health and some of my other passions. So you can follow me, visit me on my poetry website, just my initials, cdhpoetry.com. You can also type in my name on YouTube and you should see my YouTube channel. So yes, great way of connecting and staying in touch with me.
Absolutely. And if anybody is interested in getting all that information, I'll make sure to have it in this video as well as the comment section below. Man, Cedric, I do appreciate you so much for this conversation. I look forward to working with you further in the future and collaborating on more conversations like this, man.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. It's such a blessing just to be connected with you. We got connected on social media, and I think it's a powerful powerful platform of staying connected, obviously finding encouragement from other fellow Black males who are in the same position as you. So it's amazing. Like I said, honored to be here, and yeah, looking forward to further connection.
Yes, sir. Do you have any last words or encouragement for the viewing audience on this topic today? Anything else you want to say?
Yes, actually. When it comes to any mental health concern, or we even start talking about disorders and diagnosis, something that I always say and I always preach, a diagnosis, it only explains you, but it doesn't define you.
Wow.
It may explain why you do the things that you do. It may explain the symptoms that you have, but at the end of the day, it never defines you. Biblically, I'm reminded that first and foremost, our identity is being rooted in that we are image bearers of God, right? So again, any diagnosis, any mental health concerns, even any struggles with sexual addiction, pornography, at the end of the day, that does not define the totality of who you are. And I think that is my encouragement for anyone that is going through anything. Know that that is not the source of your identity and the totality of who you are as a person. Man, great words. Great way to end this conversation. And if you guys like the content that you see here on this channel, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I really want to make sure that we continue to share good information, free information out there. This doesn't take that long to get out there into the world. So please like, share, and subscribe. Go over to Cedric's channel, look at his content. Great guy, love the hoodie. That's a bomb hoodie right there. Great combination. Yeah, and you guys have a wonderful and awesome week. Peace.